I want to turn now to Miri, who's a senior fellow at the International Institute for Counterterrorism, and she's also a retired colonel who worked in Israel's military intelligence. She's in Tel Aviv. You've been watching this along with me. What strikes me, Miri, I mean, we've seen, you and I, a few of these, talked at length about these hostage takeovers over the last couple of weekends. This one I'm struck by, this one was a very, seemingly so far at least, an orderly handover, but also struck by the physical state of the hostages as they were led onto the stage and then to the waiting Red Cross cars, and as well their somber looks when you compare that with the sort of triumphant and celebratory emotions we saw with some of the other hostages.
There's no question that when I viewed these three men, it could be you, me, our husbands, our friends who were taken from their homes on October 7th. One of them, you said before, killed, and Kim, I'm going to say they were murdered. His wife and three kids were murdered, and he was taken into captivity, and he's coming out now. So they were dressed in horrific clothes. I want to remind everybody, all of these people were snatched from their homes. The young women observers were snatched in their pajamas. The young women observers were touted out in military uniform. And these three men now are dressed in horrific uniforms. By the way, it's also written in Hebrew on the uniforms, meaning there's a lot of messaging going on, the way it's being staged, the symbols that they're trying to send out Hamas, not just as control, as Selma was saying before, but they're trying to send out additional symbols. Look at how we rule. They especially want to make a comparison that our hostages, these people that were brutally taken on October 7th from their pajamas, from their bed, while they killed the wife and children, are the same as, for example, some of the Palestinian prisoners who are going to be released this afternoon, who are terrorists who were actively arrested, put on trial, convicted, given time, and are now being let out. And I hate that equivalency, and I think that Hamas is trying to show that in a very strong way.
As I mentioned, Miri, this is the fifth swap of hostages for prisoners. From the previous hostages who've been released, who've now been taken to hospitals, they've been reunited with their families, what are we learning about how they've been treated, what condition they were in?
One of the worst things is understanding how Hamas is staging this, in the sense that all of them were treated horrifically, and then as it was gradually getting towards the release, then they were given what I'm going to call slightly better, can I call it, conditions. They were moved around a lot, and most of them were always very near high-ranking Hamas officials. This is because the Hamas officials want to use the hostages themselves, not just as a bargaining chip, but also as a defense mechanism. In addition, you hear both about the way that they were psychological terror, which is, for us, I'm sitting here, as you said at the beginning, I don't know Ohad and Eli and Or, but I know them. And inside captivity, they were given a lot more access to both media, to knowing what's going on as part of the psychological warfare, to make it worse for them, meaning they were both secluded and then shown very specific type of pictures. So it's very hard to know how they are going to recover. And the last thing I'll say is that there's no question that the three men that we're seeing come out today, they look emaciated. They look horrible. I'm allowed to say that, right? And that's just in the staged moment on stage. I'm going to hope that once they come back into Israel and they're not in these horrific brown prisoner uniforms, as if they were arrested and put on trial and put on jail and held against, these are people that were snatched out of their homes. I'm hoping that afterwards they'll be able to contend a bit better with the new reality. We all know them, and they've been in captivity for 491 days.
Yeah, certainly, as I mentioned before, a very long road to recovery for these hostages. There are still some 76 hostages still in captivity, alive or dead. So I want to turn now to the future. Over the weekend, Israel is expected to send their negotiating team to Doha to sort of talk about the deal's second stage. But the delegation members, and this is according to Israeli media, aren't authorized to advance the deal until Netanyahu returns to Israel next week and briefs the cabinet about his meeting with Donald Trump. So take us through where we stand right now as we look towards the future of this deal.
I'm going to first say that in the future of the deal, in the immediate sense, even before we get to the second stage, and Kim, you and I have spoken about that, and my stomach is churning. But what about Shiri Bibas? What about Kfir and or the babies? Okay, we have to state this clearly. They're part of the first stage of the deal. They're not here yet, and I think that part of this could also be, nobody wants to get to that stage where why are they not coming out? And that second stage is supposed to be about negotiating how we bring out the rest of live and then dead, but the live Israelis who, again, some of them were soldiers, active soldiers who were fighting on October 7th against the Hamas infiltration, invasion, attack, massacre, and were taken hostage. But additional ones that are in that quota of the second stage are Israelis who were at the Nova party that Hamas have decided that they're what they're going to call Israeli soldiers. We have compulsory service. They did do their service in the past. They were taken from a Nova party at 6:30 a.m. So you have to negotiate what you do with that. Hamas is demanding a much higher exchange rate, what a horrible term, for those men that are going to still be alive in captivity. So you have to negotiate that. How many Palestinian prisoners that were, again, arrested, put on trial, given time, and are sitting in Israeli jails that the Red Cross can visit, that they have lawyers who can visit them. I mean, again, this isn't a happy situation. That comparison is the quota. But that second stage is also about a redeployment of Israeli IDF forces, both on the Israeli-Egyptian border. That was at least part of what they said from the beginning, and also in the greater other areas of the Gaza Strip. So that's already a different stage. That means not just ceasefire, it means a movement of Israeli forces. And that one is going to be, a big stage, very important. It's a point where Hamas hold cards. It's called young Israeli men, older Israeli men. I mean, let me be straight. If you're 48 years old, I love you. You're not necessarily what you would call young. And they're holding them as if they're Israeli soldiers, so that we need to get those hostages back. The price goes up. And in that sense, it becomes a much more challenging negotiation.
Yeah, certainly most of the stumbling blocks sort of definitely start now as we sort of turn the corner towards that second phase. And we've heard from both the Israeli side and from Arab countries as well that Donald Trump's plan that he kind of announced surprised everybody about taking over Gaza, that could jeopardize this next phase. What do you think the implications of Trump's plans will be, if there are any?
There are always implications in a statement like this, which is so far from statements we've ever heard. I'm going to be very upfront. That kind of a statement heard from the President of the United States that coincides with some of the very, very far-right positions inside Israel is something that kind of overwhelmed us all. We're all still trying to take it in. Why, in that sense, does it impact it? Because at least in as far as domestic Israel goes, it emboldens far-right positions. In Israel, they would call that a transfer. Here, they're calling it relocation to help out the rebuilding of the Gaza Strip. I really never thought that I would hear an American president, at least the first time that he said that, say that he would send in U.S. capabilities, like we, the U.S., should take it over. That has not happened anywhere in the Middle East. That is very different. So I'm waiting to see what it actually means. I think before in the program, Salma said it isn't a plan. It was a statement. But it definitely impacts the continuation of the negotiations, because within the Prime Minister's government right now, the ones that are still in the government, already one of the ministers has come out very strongly in support of this idea. This is not a mainstream idea, and that's going to impact domestic politics, which immediately impacts the agreement inside a government to continue with the hostage deal. And that's worrisome, to say the least.
All right, we'll leave it there, but always appreciate getting your perspective on these momentous days as we see another 3 Israelis held hostage by Hamas on their way back to Israel. Miri Eisen, thank you so much. All right,
thank you.